Alright homies, what's up everybody? We are back with another movie slash TV show review, which we haven't done for quite some time, and the Khaiza's been a little bit slacking. We did the Avatar one because, it's Avatar, The Last Airbender. This is a show that I kind of grew up in, right, back in the day. But as for Marvel stuff, I've been getting just kind of lazy. I know I was supposed to do which one was it? There were a lot of Marvel TV shows and movies that came out, which was Quantumania. Quantumania was there, and then there was The Marvels, and then there was also Marvel's Echo. So there were a few Marvel projects coming out the past year, or the past few months. So just been kind of fell off, and I was getting kind of lazy with these reviews and whatnot. Mostly because it was just getting lazy. Just laziness is a bad habit that we all have. But we're not gonna be skipping on this review. It's hot, it's new, it's fresh off the boat. No offense, no puns intended of any kind whatsoever. Because what we're going to be talking about is X-Men 97. The show came out, how many episodes are there in total for X-Men? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? 9 episodes of this new animated X-Men series, which is canonically after the ending of the old school X-Men 90s cartoon. So X-Men 97, to sum it up, is a sequel to the is kind of a sequel in terms of plot from the old school X-Men episodes back in the day. And we're gonna be trying to pace ourselves a little bit. Actually starting right now. I have a clock set for me, so I want to try to keep reviews short and concise. And just to be on par with myself. For reviews, I'm trying to try a new strat, or try to change the Khaiza self up by not going through long elongated talks, but just keep it short and smooth and to the point. So only applies to movie and TV reviews, not for fighting games. Well, that maybe can change. But anyway, Marvel Studios, sorry, not Marvel's, but Marvel Studios X-Men is the talk of the town, and everybody's been jumping up and down that this X-Men 97 show is a 10 out of 10 comic book inspired animated series. Which, of course, once again, it is a sequel to the old school X-Men show, where, slight, not slight spoilers. We're not going to go into spoilers, not yet, especially for this season, but just essentially I think Professor X leaves with the Shi'ar, Lysandra, and after he was potentially assassinated in a world summit. And so the X-Men are just left by themselves without Professor X, sort of shit like that. That's how it starts off. Yeah, what? 9? Alright. Oh, okay, gotcha. But there have been a lot of talks before this Marvel TV show that there have been some slight just some stupid shit on in the internet that X-Men is going to be like some woke shit, or like, you know, people that have never watched like X-Men but are dazzled by like the X-Men. Because, you know, what's like the X-Men, you know, it's like a real world parallel to some issues going around in America. X-Men, just as like, well, as like, not really like what their name states, but like their descriptions are like, you know, in the Marvelverse, and we have special people called mutants, and mutants have super powered abilities ranging from, you know, being strong or like creating like earthquakes, to Omega class level mutants being like telepaths and manipulating weather and stuff like that. So in X-Men lore, X-Men or mutants are treated like, you know, second class citizens, or even downright not people at all, just creatures or monsters or abominations. Which is like a, you know, a real world parallel thing about, you know, the heightened time in America back then. X-Men were, you know, well, not parroting, but like emulating sort of similar feelings with like, you know, people at that time living in hardship, you know, African Americans with like 1960s and like prior, and how they were like struggling for equality and independence. And, you know, for mutants, what they want is, you know, just to live a content like normal life. But humanity is like, nah, fuck those weird ass like creatures. Get them off our planet. You go out there and get. I said, boy, get. You know, quoting like Foghorn Leghorn over here. There's gotta be like a, we gotta have like a Foghorn Leghorn thing. Like a boy, I said, boy. I need to make like a, you know, with like the advancements of AI. I should like search for like a Foghorn Leghorn like AI bot, and it would just like be Foghorn Leghorn like lecturing folks left and right. Boy, I say, boy, now pay attention, son. You guys understand like frame data. You know, I would love that. Anyway, X-Men 97 continues where we left off in the X-Men like OG. Oh yeah, a lot of people were like talking about like sort of like the wokeness that X-Men like brings, but X-Men has always been about like woke culture, you know. They have been like battling for, you know, civil rights. That's what like the X-Men are. X-Men, there's are wide ranges of like X-Men, from like mutants to like, you know, well, there are mutants, but then there's like the Xavier School of Higher Education, Higher Learning, led by Professor Charles Xavier, who is like a mutant. Then there's like the Brotherhood, which is led by Magneto, a very iconic villain, mutant ability, power of magnetism. Charles is a lifelong friend. Then there's like other like smaller factions like Weapon X or the X-Force. Also Apocalypse Gang, like his shtick is like he's the first like mutant, the first mutant to ever have like existed, and he's like a major villain for the X-Men. And there's like so many like different like factions, you know. Before going into like X-Men 97, I was actually like, you know, not very down with X-Men, believe it or not. I had to do like homework for X-Men 97, so I watched all of the X-Men cartoon episodes from season 1 to season 5. It was a long stretch, and boy, let me tell you, they're definitely it's definitely a show of that time, right? It was, you know, rusty. It had its like charm. a lot of it is just like, you know, not the insane like action stuff that you see like down here, like X-Men. Oh, the fuck? Ad break, ad walls or some shit. Scared the shit out of me. I thought my PC like crashed on me. I was like, no. But it is definitely like a show of its like time. That, you know, not saying like anything bad or anything, but the show like material, there are like a lot of like, you know, arcs of episodes in each like season. Like season 1 was something I don't remember. There was like season 2, which was like Mr. Sinister. Season 3 was the Dark Phoenix. Season 4 was like Asteroid M, and then like all that other shit. Season 4 and 5, I forgot what they were. They were just like random like episodes. Apparently, from what I've like read up, is that X-Men, the old school like series, was supposed to end at around like season 4, but the Fox, who was like with them at the time, decided like, okay, let's add like more seasons just to like fill in like those gaps. And so they did, which was, you know, not intended for like the X-Men show, but they still did like anyway. And yeah, a lot of like the show material, just like, you know, quirky one-liners, a lot of like musical scores tied with like action. It was definitely like, it reminded me a lot about like old school Power Rangers, right? Old school Power Rangers was like, or like the first one, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Teenagers with attitude, fighting monsters in the day and doing homework at the night. And they wear like spandex, they wear like tight clothing, they get like cool accessories, beat down bad guys, summon like a Megazord, there's like music all over the place. It was a fun show with not a lot of like weight to it until like Tommy Oliver, the Green Ranger, stepped in, and then Power Rangers got heavily boosted. So it's kind of like a similar thing with like the old school X-Men cartoons, right? They beat up bad guys. The day is like done. Say a lot of like one-liners like all over the place. So yeah, it's like a show for its time. It's not like a bad thing, but it was like in the era that it was in. And also, like, I liked X-Men. I didn't gravitate to like the X-Men old school cartoon, but I certainly have watched other like X-Men shows later down the line, like X-Men Evolution, which was like, you know, like new gen cast. Like not everybody was like superheroes, rather they were just most of them high schoolers figuring out high schooler. And then there was Wolverine and the X-Men, like a goated show in like my opinion, which ultimately didn't get like a season 2, and season 1 teased with like Apocalypse as like a cliffhanger. But X-Men, you know, is kind of like everywhere growing up in like in the 90s and early like 2000s. Same with like Spider-Man. There were like 2 like Marvel titans that were a part of everybody's like childhood, which were X-Men and Spider-Man. You were either like one or the other, or you like both. I was more into like Spider-Man more than anything, not like X-Men, but I dug X-Men, you know. And X-Men were at like, you know, very like peaking up highs when they were doing the live action X-Men movies with Bryan Singer, who was like the director. So X-Men were like everywhere and anywhere, you know. Some of like my favorite X-Men though, like just in terms of like powers, were like, well, Gambit. I definitely love Gambit, and hence like my shirt, right? Even though I don't know much about the character, but I love like his like shtick of like throwing cards and stuff like that. And especially Marvel vs. Capcom, he attacks with like a bow staff, and his power is like, you know, charging like kinetic energy to make things like explode. Another one that I love was Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler with the ability to teleport everywhere. I definitely love that guy. And I dug like Wolverine. Well, that's only like because Wolverine was like everywhere though. I mean, like I said, X-Men were at like their peak, and what arose from them were like, you know, the movies, the X-Men movies by Bryan Singer. But it was like a lot of Wolverine overdose. Wolverine is a popular character, yes, and there are like a lot of like comics about him, and there's even like, you know, Old Man Logan, which is like, you know, adamantium degradation, his X Factor is not healing him properly and all that shit. But everybody was super like a Wolverine fan, and the movies like made it apparently so, you know. Hugh Jackman definitely sold the character Wolverine, even though like the actor himself is not physically proportionate to Wolverine's actual size. Wolverine is like a short dude, like he's about like 4'7", and Hugh Jackman's like this like lumbering dude, like 6 foot something. So it's like, even though his height or his like, you know, physical biology doesn't make up for Wolverine, but he is like the actor that makes Wolverine, you know, work. And I'm glad that he's like coming back for Deadpool and Wolverine, man. He's the star. He's the reason that everybody knows Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. Kind of like, you know, a small gripe, because, you know, there are some like Marvel dudes that don't like being associated with just like a Marvel like role. Even though like some new gens are kind of like okay with it, the actor for like Shang-Chi, Simu Liu, is perfectly fine with it because that's like his breakout role. Like he was a nobody until he became a somebody after being hired by Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios. So it's like it's a middle pass in that like discussion. But I'm glad that like Wolverine is like coming back. Who else did I like as like a character from like X-Men? I liked Rogue a lot. I like Rogue because of like the cartoons and stuff like that. Cyclops to an extent because of like the eye lasers. Pretty much like it. But like X-Men were like everywhere until they like hit like a bump in like in the early 2010s, when not a lot of people were like liking X-Men, and coincidentally, because of the rise of the MCU with lesser known Marvel heroes making more spotlight than the X-Men. Like back in the day, back in the early 90s and in the late 90s, early 2000s, everybody liked X-Men and Spider-Man. But in the 2010s, a lot of people now know Iron Man, Captain America, because of the narrative, because of the plots of the early MCU projects, and of course Avengers. Everybody knows Hulk though, but not everybody knew about Cap. Not everybody knew about Iron Man, Thor, unless you're like a really like uber comic book nerd running a comic book store, right? But just because of those films, like those like smaller like characters grew up in popularity. Now everybody knows about Thanos or the Avengers, right? Now they became widely like successful and popular, even like to this day. And so when they were taking a rise, X-Men had to like drop. Until Marvel is starting to bring them back with future projects, and of course Spider-Man was like, he was added in Marvel Civil War. So Spider-Man is like everywhere and anywhere. Like he was boosting popularity again because of the MCU picks and and of course Tom Holland being like the new face of Spider-Man. And also not just in Marvel Studios, but like Sony with their animated division, and with the avant-garde of Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse with Miles Morales. And so we are here now in the year of our Lord 2024, and this is kind of like the year where X-Men are starting to shine, and for all the more good reason. Because X-Men 97 is like a goated fucking show. I didn't think I would have this much like enjoyment for a show. Like whenever I would like watch like a show, I would be kind of like OCD centric. Like if I start like a show, I want to see what everything happens like next after next after next, right? I'm not content with like a first episode unless it's like really rare, where like the first episode of a TV show or the first 5 minutes of a movie, I'm like, nah, that's a hard pass. I've had that very like infrequently. It's only like in rare chances. Like a while ago, Mom and I were watching a Bollywood movie, and yeah, it was like, it's available on Netflix, and we were like, oh, this is like kind of cool, about like, you know, India with like marriage ceremonies, and the whole plot was like mixed marriages. But for the first like 10 or 15 minutes in the movie, it just sort of went all over the place. It got haywire, and I just like turned myself off, and I was like, I'm done, I'm not watching this anymore. And then what my mom told me, like she continued after the 15 minutes, like there would be like, I'm gonna spell since I don't want to say the whole word, RAPE. So I just so she just GTFO'd out of that movie, and that movie was so like DUMB dumb that I just like, I couldn't anymore. But those are like rare chances. If I'm like into like a series or like a show, it would just mostly be down to just I want to finish everything in that movie / TV show, mostly for the OCD, mostly for just like me trying to complete everything in that like show. So yeah, that's like how I am. Like damn, I still gotta watch like I was like super into it back then, but I gotta get back into it, and I'm super upset at this, and I know my friends are like gauging me. But Kaiji, the gambling manga / anime, I definitely want to get back into that show again, because I started up real good. I like the story and whatnot, but I just like stopped because like work. But I need to get back into it again. Regardless, right? X-Men 97, it is a fantastic show, right? I did not have any like we'll talk about like maybe one or few like gripes like later on, but X-Men 97 is a solid like show. What mostly makes it like a solid show is because of the writing and storytelling, you know? Like we have like writing all over the place everywhere. We have storytelling in a lot of like movies and like TV shows, but never have we did like a show. Did we have like a show that's like, you know, so compelling, challenges like, you know, the wokeness of like X-Men and makes us like it, you know? Yeah, a lot of things about the X-Men 97 show are really like spot on, and most of it is just down to like the writing and like the character development more than anything, you know? Like each episode more compelling than actually like doing like a Netflix like length episode. the runtime for each X-Men episode is for the most part 27 to 29 minutes. Because they want to emulate like the feel of the old school X-Men animated cartoon. But only one episode didn't have the 29 minute runtime episode, and that was the last episode, not semi-last, sorry, the last episode, Tolerance is Extinction, part 3. That shit went on for a full ass like Netflix episode length, like 50 episodes. Like holy shit. Guess it gotta like make sense because they really want to like pile high on like, you know, some of the dramatic moments that happened in the previous X-Men episodes. And so why don't we just like get down to like spoilers for X-Men 97, right? Big like hashtag spoilers for the most part for X-Men 97. So yeah, like how I teased a little bit, well, kind of like spoilers like earlier ago, is that it immediately picks up where the X-Men left off with Professor Charles Xavier like quote unquote dead in the last episode of X-Men in season 5. But the team like struggles to like fight off against like, you know, the freedom fighters. Like they're like in the X-Men world, it's like there's a whole bunch of like different like things inter like within like each other, right? Sort of like my beef with like the old school like X-Men. There's like, you know, the Neo freedom fighters. There's like the underground bandit mutants. There's like X-Force. There's like too many like affiliations with like X-Men, and it's like so like confusing to like keep track of like which one is like which. But first episode kicks off with like, you know, the X-Men being, you know, X-Men. Cyclops, Wolverine, Storm, Jubilee, Beast, Morph is also there after like the events of the X-Men show. Has like a new look to him, which is like, you know, this like grayish like look to him. He's no longer trying to like hide or like mask. He's now fully unmasked. And then Gambit and Rogue. So all of like the X-Men stars and players from the old school X-Men are like in the first episode, and first episode was just dealing with, you know, the leadership roles, and really amazed at like the first episode narrative and the character development. Scott Summers, you know, everybody doesn't like Scott Summers because of his scout boyish like charm. He always pulls the baddest of bitches. no offense, Jean Grey, Emma Frost, but yeah, like in the comics he always pulls like the baddest of bitches. Like he is like the Superman of like the group. He always has like a Lois Lane. He always has like you know, bitches riding up on his dick, you know. He's just that guy. he's that smooth criminal. He has that riz. But yeah, oh, there was also like Storm. Oh yeah, that's right. And it really like redeemed like the Boy Scout like archetype, right? Because, you know, Scott is dealing with like the leadership roles after Professor Xavier, you know, quote unquote died. And they fight like Sentinels, and like the team gets like, you know, together. Okay. Hey, Mom. I'll leave it there. Thank you, Mom. Sorry, that was Mom giving me my tea. I also have like yogurt and a lot of goodies up in this room. But yeah, like the first episode was like a good like primer, like reintroduction of like all of like the X-Men. We get to see like grungy like Wolverine, Scott trying to like figure out like the leader. They fight like some bad guys, rescue like a new recruit, Sunspot, Roberto de Costa, right? If I pronounce his like name correctly. I only know like Sunspot, not the real like name. Episode like ends with like, you know, Magneto filling in the role of Charles Xavier, which is like, yeah, Magneto filling the role of Charles Xavier. That's, oh boy, that's gonna turn out, you know, something. But then like Magneto proves himself like a really like good character, honestly, right? And this like all started with like the second episode, where there was a lot of like hashtag trending on Twitter about Magneto and his like infamous speech against like humanity. This was actually like triggered, the speech was actually triggered via like a human like radicalist, a human radicalist like hunting down mutants and shot Storm with a deneuralizer, or not like a deneuralizer like Men in Black, but like a gun that like strips away mutant powers, and Magneto like goes ham on his like dialogue, right? Magneto goes fucking ham on like the sins of humanity, and like we mutants are like better than you like pig like people. Like damn bro, like holy shit, my king over here with the preaching the good gospel. Holy crap, man. By like third episode, what was like third episode? Oh, that's right. By the end of the second episode, Storm like leaves because she feels like powerless. And the third episode was about Mr. Sinister and the Jean and Cyclops dilemma. Jean was not like the character that what like we know from like episode 1 and 2, rather than it was like a Jean clone. And they summed it all up in like one episode. Like holy shit. Everybody was like super down bad for like Madeline Pryor, like you know, like damn, baby girl can like take me, you know, the Goblin Queen. So Jean comes back like for reals, and Madeline like leaves. Fourth episode was, what was like fourth episode? Oh, I think it was like with Storm and Forge, of her trying to like be at one with like nature, trying to like see what can like bring back like her powers. And she gets like her own like mini arc, which of course it's Storm. Like every like X-Men show, Storm is just like a very like fan favorite character. She's, you know, mega class mutant. She is like, you know, Wakanda's queen. Though they never like address that ever in like these X-Men shows at all. But I know deadass for certain that like Storm, Aurora Moreau, and Black Panther T'Challa are like an item in the comics. Like, what's going on? Like, why is it that they always like separate them, you know? Which of course, you know, that's like to be fair. Because one of like the things about like the X-Men is that, you know, it's just like the X-Men. Sure, it's in a Marvel like world where, you know, there's all these like, you know, heroes and villains from across like the Marvel like multiverse. But as like a show, and I think I tweeted this probably in the sixth episode, where they had like a far off spoiler alert, but we'll get into that, a Captain America tease. And I like basically tweeted that like, yo, X-Men should like just be X-Men. And I got like one like, you know, like Twitter like comment, because of course like Twitter, everybody has like an open mouth, that like Cap is in like in the same universe. LOL. What? And I guess he didn't just like read the message, because he's like going off on like highness for his like Marvel like lore stuff. And people don't like understand that like this is like a TV show, right? Like I understand they're connected with like in the comics, and they have established universes from like the comics and like in lore and stuff, but as like a TV show, I just want X-Men to just be X-Men. Like no comics, no TV, no like intercontinental bullshit like that, but just like the show or the movie itself, I'm like looking at and judging at. Comics are like a completely different thing. If it's like in the comic realm, then I could be susceptible to, you know, reasoning, and I can understand where that person is like coming from. But like, this is a TV show, dude. Like, I want things just to like focus on that and no like ties into, you know, Marvel Avengers or some like, you know, Marvel Cinematic Universe like post-credit scene or like tease. Something like that, you know? Just keep it solely just X-Men. Anyway, episode 5, this is where like, you know, the biggest fucking episode aired for X-Men 97. And this is where a lot of people were like praising X-Men for that Genosha massacre scene. And Gambit's quote, Gambit's death. We're using like quote unquotes, right? Even though like it was a tragic ending and it was very traumatic on Rogue, because Rogue was like, you know, Rogue is a very awesome character. Then in like in the comic, then in like in the OG TV show, right? Rogue goes through such like a transformation from like being like a follower of Charles Xavier, a hero, to just being batshit like crazy because she lost the two loves of her life. The one being, which was Gambit. Gambit was the one hero that really loved Rogue like through and through, despite her difficulties as like a mutant with, you know, skin on skin contact absorption. I'm like, damn, bro, that's a guy with a commitment. Holy shit. Rogue was out here worrying about like, well, man, I can't touch anybody, Rami. I can't touch anybody, Sugar. Gambit over here just like playing all his cards, and you know, he's a fucking champ. And he made the most noblest of sacrifice by, you know, killing off like a rogue, like ancient sentinel that wiped out all of like Genosha with his kinetic powers, and Rogue holding and cradling like his body. Like she says like, Sugar, I can't feel you. Like, damn, bro. Episode 6 was the... Oh no, it was 10 episodes. Yeah, my bad. 10 episodes. There was like the Charles Xavier episode. Yeah, that's right. Here, let me look at like the listings again. Yeah, let me see. X-Men 97, right? And that's the logo transparent. Where's like the X-Men wiki? There you go. Oh yeah, they are 10 episodes. That's right. Okay. There are 10. Okay, okay, cool. Okay, so let me just like go back over here and go back to over here. All right. But yeah, man, like Gambit like sacrifices his life, and then it jumps to like the next episode, which was talking about Rogue's like recovery of her like weather hell powers. She got like a new costume though. Reforged bonds with Forge, no pun intended. Next episode was Charles Xavier, who is actually like alive and is with the Shi'ar Empire, Lysandra and all those like dudes and dudettes. I don't know, like I didn't even know of like a Shi'ar Empire when I was watching like X-Men the OG series. I was like, what the fuck are these, like when did X-Men go into like aliens? I thought they were just like grounded. I'm like, huh? That's how much I like know little of X-Men, but X-Men is more than that. They went to like, you know, space, they fought like aliens, they fought, of course, you know, the Phoenix, Apocalypse, time travel, bullshits. What else am I remembering? Oh, they go to like Savage Land where they fight like prehistoric like dinosaurs and cavemen and shit. Like, yeah, X-Men could just like go wherever the fuck it wants, you know? But Xavier is alive and he like defects from the Shi'ar Empire. His like love Lysandra to be with the X-Men because that's like his like mission, his quote-unquote family. And then the semi to last episodes, right, which is the 3-parter, Tolerance is Extinction. Which is, of course, these are the X-Men like naming listings are like callbacks to the OG X-Men, where in the OG X-Men, the episodes have like singular episodes and they have like, big arc episodes. Infamous one would be like the Dark Phoenix saga for the X-Men. Where the Dark Phoenix, everybody knows Dark Phoenix from like the movies and, the shows and whatnot. A cosmic entity known as like Phoenix inhabits the body mind of the telepath Jean Grey, and she becomes the Phoenix or Dark Phoenix, an unstoppable force said to bring about calamity after calamity, I hate Dark Phoenix. I hate the Phoenix saga, mostly because it stems from, Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Baddest bitch of them all, not in a good way, but in a bad way. Most like dank ass girl with the most busted ass ability there is in Marvel 3, level 5 X Factor, or sorry, level 5 meter, level 3 X Factor, Dark Phoenix, just spam projectiles and spam traps. Your opponent cannot get away. She has a burst mechanic. Fuck that bitch. Fuck that bitch. Hell no. She is a goddamn cancerous character. There's even like anti-tech for her. She's still a fucking disgusting ass hell character. But yeah, like most of like the X-Men OG episodes have like arcs, right? They're like mini like movies within like each season. So Tolerance is Extinction is a very good play on that. And Tolerance is Extinction was like, the big bad's ultimate reveal of this X-Men 97 season, who was Bastion. And Bastion is, I had to like look this up, is like, a god of Sentinels. Like he is like the chosen one. He is like the leader of the Operation Zero Tolerance, which is like Marvel's like way of, mass genocide of mutants. So it's like, oh my goodness. I did not even know about like a Bastion to begin with. But, like he is a character. I'm like, oh shit. Oh, okay. Cool. And Bastion is like kind of like a neat character, I would say. Very like, I don't know if I would say like Bastion's a very flowchart MCU character. Like what he like preached about is like, Bastion's like origin is that he wasn't supposed to be like, a quote unquote mutant, even though like he technically is, but he is a little white boy that got infected by time travel bullshit by the king of Sentinels, Master Mold, and their subsequent like child, which was like the perfect Sentinel, Nimrod. Can't believe there's like a name called Nimrod. And injected their like cells or energy into Bastion. And so Bastion had like the mutant ability, or like, like the ability to talk to machines and understand them. And so Bastion went so far crazy into like his Operation Zero Tolerance that he made everybody into Prime Sentinels, like upgraded versions of the big ass honky tonky robots that we know of from X-Men. So Bastion is like a cool character. The only like, small problem I have with him is that, like I said, he's a very like flowcharty character. Like he wishes for like peace in our time, but wants to like wipe out like mutants, and he gets into a more extreme side of like humanity, because humanity, as he says, is good, but can advance to levels of like weaponry and like, threat that he has to correct the solution. Kind of like an anime like turn, right? Or like a, well, not like a Terminator term, but it's like mutants are eliminated, but what's the next big threat? Humans. Let's eradicate humans. And so that's what, like, kind of like why I say like a flowcharty thing. But ultimately Bastion gets like defeated, and Bastion gets defeated. Rogue still mourns for Gambit. Operation Zero Tolerance is like a very fantastic fucking season finale, right? Combines every like aspect with like Scott and Jean's like dilemma with each other after like the Madeline Pryor incident, and of course the embarrassing moments with like Cable, their son. There's also what else was there? Jubilee and Robert DaCosta. And Robert DaCosta kind of like on again, off again. Well, Jubilee wants to be with like Robert, and Robert is just like this weird kid that doesn't know what he wants to be. He just wants to like, you know, live his life. Simple as that. What else is there with like Operation Zero Tolerance? Wolverine having his like badass like moments. And of course like the semi-final episode of Magneto ripping out his like adamantine exoskeleton that was like dark and also awesome at the same time. There were just like a lot of like good moments like in this X-Men show. Yeah, and Rogue with like, you know, the transformation of like her loss with Gambit and Gambit at Magneto. She would even like throw hands with Captain America, who Rogue was like looking for people who started like the Sentinel program, and is in key of finding like Bolivar Trask, but Cap intercepts her and says like, no, you need to stand down. I have to like side with like the government, which is like, yeah. Cap is not really like a good guy for the mutants, even though like he praises like democracy, but nah, he's like America's strongest like soldier. He is America's Boy Scout. Much so that that Scott Summers is the Boy Scout for the X-Men. He always wants to be like a leader. Captain America in comic book lore is always like America's leader. It's a very like different idea of Captain America that we have from the movies, because Captain America would, you know, willingly like, you know, stop being America's pet if America is under some like seedy shit, right? Like Winter Soldier is like a good example. He saw that the America he believed in is not just, is not right, so he decides to, you know, fuck it, right? A lot of like top officials in Winter Soldier are like Hydra agents. So he's like, fuck it, this is not the America that I'm like fighting for. And it really like pays off so fucking well in that movie. Even like to like Civil War Captain America is like, we have to give up our rights to save people. Cap is like, nah, fuck that. Just cause like, well, a bombing in what was it? Not Sokovia. Was it Sokovia? Oh, Wakanda. Yeah, there was like a bomb building. That's what like triggered Civil War in Marvel Civil War. There was like a bombing in Wakanda, and the Avengers couldn't like save everybody in there. So they had to split between Captain America or Iron Man. You either with the government or against the government sort of thing. So, I mean, to back it all, like, yeah, there's a lot of like wokeness, not even just like with X-Men, but there's also with like, you know, Marvel like as well as a whole. There's a lot of like woke things, and it's just like X-Men takes like the full frontal force of it. It's because, oh, we're fighting for like civil rights, but civil rights and like mutants are like, you know, allegory to like, you know, African Americans in the 1960s and like earlier, and like that's like what the point is. You know, X-Men is emulating the experiences that people had in the 60s, and it's just a different way of like, you know, looking at it. There's like, of course, prejudice, but it's prejudice against like mutants with like supernatural abilities. Not supernatural, superhuman abilities. So yeah, of course it's like woke, but it plays off that like so fucking well, right? Once again, it's like in the narration, it's in the storytelling, it's in the writing. There's a lot of like good lines over here that are very like quotable in X-Men that it's hard to like count. What was it? Bastion's like line. Humanity would rather die than to raise a kid who's like a walking natural freak. Like, damn, bro. That really like hit the nail like super fucking hard. Or like, you know, Magneto was right. The trending like thing on like Twitter, like, you know, after Magneto got like, you know, well, not really killed, but he was like like quote unquote killed in action, but he would later survive because of like Bastion. But yeah, like Magneto like fucking started World War III by cutting off like the electrical power of every like thing, every like electrical source in the world, you know, like shit, man. Magneto started World War like III because of the massacre in like Genosha, and Magneto was like fucking right. Humans will never change. Humans will like always like be the same. They will like, there will always be like some asshole that doesn't like the way things are. Like change is like bad. Let's return to the status quo, you know, sort of thing. So Operation Tolerance's Extinction is a really like good episode with a lot of like really good moments here and there. Not just in terms of action, because the action is really like subpar. And I gotta give credit to like the animation team for X-Men. I was a little hesitant because, you know, Marvel Studios does have like animated works, and that's like What If. I mean, of course, they have like X-Men shows and media beforehand, like Wolverine and the X-Men, X-Men Evolution, but this is like a Marvel Studios animation, and they mostly do like live action work. So when rumors were going around that they're doing like a What If, this was like back in like season 1, and I watched season 1 of What If. It was good, but it was definitely very funky looking. Like, I did not like the animation choice that they chose for What If. I wish they could have gone a different like route. And in here, it like elevates like the old school like X-Men 90s cartoon and bumps it up to like a 10. So you get a lot of like, cause like in the X-Men shows, you know, there'd be like a good like balance between like, you know, story development and writing, and then there's like bombastic like X-Men action with super mutant abilities and whatnot. And the action scenes for like X-Men were like, yeah, they're cool, they're passable, but they weren't elevated to like, you know, the animation tricks and styles like X-Men 97 has, you know. So I definitely give a lot of like praise for X-Men 97 for that, right? Action scenes are good, the cameos stuff, right? It is like a Marvel show, so there's got to be like some callbacks to old school X-Men, not X-Men, old school Marvel shows that happened at the time. So we definitely saw like some killer ones out there, like Morph turning into different like X-Men / Avengers, like Morph turning into Pietro and Hulk. There's also cameos of Spider-Man from the Spider-Man animated series. There's also like Silver Samurai that also makes an appearance. Psylocke, the Hellfire Club with Emma Frost. Of course, Captain America we saw. There was also like Iron Man. We also saw like some interesting ones like Cloak and Dagger and Daredevil. So there was like cameo characters out of like the wazoo, you know? But like I said, right? Those are just like cameos, and they should just like stay as cameos. They should not like hint or tease that like, oh, like, you know, we saw like Spider-Man, so are we gonna see like Spider-Man, you know, next? which is, of course, that's kind of like bound to happen considering the popularity of X-Men 97, but should just like leave, again, X-Men as is. Don't like, you know, insert any other like teases or media that are in there. Which they kind of like did at the season finale with Spidey and MJ. But those are just like, you know, cameos. Those are just like there to, you know, oh, you remember this thing back then as a kid? Oh, well, here you go, you know? And so the season finale ends with like, now that Bastion is over, now comes like the next villain, or the recurring villain, which will be, you know, hopefully like an X-Men 97 season 2, which I think they will call it like X-Men 90 something, maybe like 99 or 2000. Probably 99. Apocalypse. So they've been teasing Insabanur, Apocalypse, right? Yeah, that's another character that I really liked. Apocalypse. I just like this like big like honky tonky like character, and I definitely got in love with him because of his like Egyptian roots. Right? He's like the first mutant, but he hailed from like the deserts of Egypt. I didn't like his portrayal in the live action movie with Oscar Isaac, but I definitely dug how he was handled in X-Men Evolution. I remember like faint memories of like the old school X-Men show. Like he would, there would always be like a consistency of like Apocalypse brainwashing Angel to become Archangel as like his horseman of the Apocalypse, and that would be like a key point going forward for season 2, is that the ending tease with Apocalypse with like the X-Men going in like in different timelines, Rogue, Magneto, Xavier, Beast, and Kurt, Nightcrawler, going back to the past to the origins of Apocalypse, the present, the future with Jean and Scott encountering like the Ansaki clan, and they find like a child version of their child Nathan, and the present like going into Genosha and picking up like dust, which later revealed to be like Gambit's like card, which is like, oh shit, they're gonna revive Gambit, which is of course, you know, Gambit is not gonna be dead. No X-Men character is gonna be dead. You know, like this is like comic book like 101 or like fiction 101. If a character is like popular enough, they're gonna bring his ass back one way or the other. We don't count the exception of like Tekken though, because Tekken will find some way, shape, or manner to bring back Heihachi, right? I will still keep going on with like that argument. Heihachi is never dead. Harada just fitted in like Tekken 8 like Heihachi is dead, but we know this motherfucker's gonna come back. He's been climbing up fucking volcanoes and shit. He's been climbing up cliffs. The Mishima family has been climbing up cliffs like it's no fucking business. You know, like shit, man. Characters like come and go as like they please. Why? Because of writing. You know? That's just like how the fiction business works. If a character is dead, then they'll like stay dead. That's it. But if a character is like popular enough, like Rogue or like things like that, or like Melina, they're gonna probably bring their asses back. It's most definitely. So yeah, season 2 is gonna be like Apocalypse, and from what I've heard from like tweets of like X-Men, that they're going to be going ahead into production for X-Men 98 or 99 or whatever. And that was like the end of X-Men. Now the critical reception of it, right? It's a godlike fucking show. Though I would like hold back on the phrase like godlike, though. I wouldn't say it's godlike. Right? As much as like, you know, X-Men is a really like good show for like good writing, good action, good storytelling and all that stuff. It's a lot of like my philosophy / ideology that I don't necessarily give like 10s out of 10s unless, you know, it really like strikes me to a chord. It's only like 10 out of 10 if like, what I feel like a 10 out of 10 would be is like if it strikes you to your core and you really like loved and enjoyed it so much for you. An example I always like bring up is like Hi-Fi Rush. Hi-Fi Rush is the dumbest of story, but it's an action game that, you know, really is like defined so well with like choreographed music beats with action beats that it makes the gameplay a lot interesting comparatively to most like action games, you know? The story is like very simple and whack and cheesy, but it's so fun that it plays itself off so well, you know? I give it like a 10 out of 10 because it's a fun ride. And a lot of video games try to go for like, you know, pushing the narrative, like try to send a message. Hi-Fi Rush is about getting a job. That's really it. You know, we have this like esoteric theme about like, you know, kindness and revenge with like Last of Us with compelling like stories. Chai out here just like getting a job. Man, I don't give a fuck. You know? So it's a lot of like, for me, Hi-Fi Rush is a 10 out of 10, you know? In like film media, another example would be Lord of the Rings, right? I love Lord of the Rings. I would even like go back to watch like all 3 Lord of the Rings films if I had like time. I would like, if I'm not like doing work, I would watch all 3 movies because they're fucking goated movies. Not too sure about, you know, the Hobbit or the Rings of Power, which I heard it's going to get a season 2, oddly enough. Yeah, Amazon Prime like greenlit season 2 for the Rings of Power Lord of the Rings prequel series, and I'm like, why? Why? It was an okay like prequel series, nothing to like boost highly about, but it was like, okay, it's cool. Definitely a lot of like key like lore points like missing, or like lore contingencies missing with like Lord of the Rings, but it was like all right, not great. But Lord of the Rings had like an all-star cast. The storytelling is like really good. The dialogue is very like rememberable. It gets a lot more bigger and better with Two Towers and Return of the King. Well, Lord of the Rings is such a like a classic like trilogy that it deserves like a 10 out of 10. Hell, Lord of the Rings got like Academy Awards and like Oscar nominations. So that's like 10 out of 10. And not just saying that like it got Academy Awards and nominations, it's just I personally like it. Another like film series is Pirates of the Caribbean. I love like the all-star cast of like Johnny Depp, Orlando Bloom, all that shit. I love like the mythos of like Pirates of the Caribbean lore. I love Jack Sparrow. He's a funny, like drunk as fuck pirate. I loved like that series. I wish it would have stopped at like 3, but hey, you know the film industry. For X-Men 97 though, it is like a good series though, right? I wouldn't give it a 10 out of 10 in my honest opinion, no. Not just because of like my personal belief of like no 10s out of 10s, but there are like some gripes that I have to like address and acknowledge. As much as like, ooh, Khaiza, why are you like, you know, dissing on the most godlike X-Men like Marvel show that has ever come to be? It's the best show. It's the most godlike show. You must like it because I like it. No. There are a few gripes with this show, and this is one thing that I wanted to like bring up, and is the homework aspect of X-Men 97. What do I mean by like homework aspect? Is like when you watch like let's say the old school X-Men show, there's a lot of like interconnected like people, events, areas, climates that you don't know what they are, so you have to like Wikipedia those things, and you get like a general summary of like what they are, and then the episodes would like play out. Like, I don't know who the fuck Bastion is. I don't know who Madeline Pryor is. I don't know who I don't know what the life death arc is for Storm. But there are events that like, you know, happen, and of course it's different from like comics, but you have to like look up so much like, you know, preloaded information to get ahead of like what everybody's talking about. Like, oh, I know this. Especially like, you know, the well, not the adamantium, but like Operation Zero Tolerance and all that jazz, you know? Like, you have to do like so much like homework for a series, especially like X-Men, that it becomes like very like daunting. You know, I'm not saying that's like, you know, that's like a bad thing. It's like a mostly common trope with like a lot of like comic book movies and like comic books, not comic books, after comic books, comic book TV shows and movies, that it sort of like intertwines with like, you know, the phenomenon in the entertainment industry that like there's so many superhero-esque shows, movies, media. It's all over the place. Like, people would coin like the term superhero fatigue, and that's like a real thing, believe it or not. Like, there's like, we all lived in that era where like Marvel was pumping out movie after movie, TV show after TV show, and it was getting kind of like ridiculous, right? A lot of like just like what media like dominates is like, you know, the superhero. Oh, I thought I heard like a channel point somewhere or something. Is like there's always like a superhero every now and then. It's like every like TV show, every like movie, and it's kind of like, you know, kind of like boring almost. It's kind of like I have to keep up with like so much. It's not like back in the day where they were like, you know, movies were like, you know, rarely popping off, right? We would always like go to like theaters. We would get like a superhero movie every now and then. Not like every year like a Call of Duty or an Assassin's Creed, no. There would always be like a superhero movie like in July, and then there would be like another one in like October or November, and it's just like, yeah, films are now taking the turn of like, you know, superheroes are the new genre. Superheroes are the new media. Like, it's getting kind of like ridiculous at this. I've watched like, what, recently, we didn't watch a Marvel film, but we're gonna watch Deadpool and Wolverine though, Mom and I. But we watched Monkey Man. We watched Dev Patel's Monkey Man, and honestly, it was a really good movie, right? It doesn't have any like name brand like Marvel like actors, nor of course not Monkey Man. I mean, there was like a monkey fictional character in the Marvel like universe somewhere, but it's a completely original piece, directed and produced by Dev Patel, and it had Jordan Peele, and it was a fantastic gory action movie that's like John Wick but Indian. And I definitely enjoyed that. It was a refreshing take than what we always see in Marvel movies. In Marvel movies, in DC movies, in Amazon Prime TV shows like The Boys, in Invincible. There's just like so many of them, you know? There's just so many of them. I mean, and of course, like X-Men 97 is one of them. No disrespect, but like it still falls under that category of like there's an X-Men, like there's not X-Men. There's a superhero TV show out there. You know? So it's getting kind of like ridiculous. So like the homework part is definitely like one of them, where you have to like brush up on a lot of like info beforehand. Although the episodes like play out like they're like introductions to Like, you don't need to know the homework because of how well the story is like written out, but it still is like, if you want to get ahead of like the game, you gotta do your research, you gotta do your homework on these characters. But the X-Men 97 is so brilliant that it doesn't need to. Are there like any other gripes that would bump it like down? Oh, probably one small gripe would be like episode 5 to episode 6. Like, it's like a lost in translation thing. It's very like Netflixy, where like episode 5, we had like the Genosha genocide, and then next episode, Storm is, you know, getting her powers back, and she got like a new bomber ass costume, and she gets like her abilities back. Very like flowcharty, like you had like a major event, and here's like this like pretext episode of another character that was outside, you know? But it's like a small thing. It's like a very like flowcharty thing that like some TV shows like do. But yeah, like I would honestly give like X-Men 97 a 9 out of 10. I wouldn't say 10. Okay, no, 9.5. Yeah, let's just say 9.5, right? To appease like the masses. It's not 10 out of 10, where it's like GOAT of all time. Sorry, it's like GOAT of all time. But you could definitely like, you know, no, not you could definitely. It's just 9 out of 10, right? Simple as that. And of course, right? 9 out of 10, it got like awarded for best animation at like some award studio or some award like show. So that's really good. But it's a good show, right? The only thing I would like hear like at the back end is like if it got like if there's like a Studio Ghibli show, oh my god, the absurd amount of like Marvel fans like screaming or like pitching that like Marvel like Studio Ghibli is like mid. Like that one fucker that like talking about, you know, what was it? Boy in the Heron is like mid. Studio Ghibli is mid. Who watches that shit? And he was stark raving like up and down on like Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Like, motherfucker, calm the fuck on. Calm the fuck on, bro. Yo, you chill the fuck out, bro. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse has cool animation and cool like story, but this is Studio Ghibli we're talking about. Studio Ghiblis are like pioneer animation studios. They've been doing this shit since like 1990s, and they got sleek animation that's like, you know, way better than it. Into the Spider-Verse. Of course, Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse have unique animations to their own thing, but it's like saying like, it's like saying Titanic. It's like saying Titanic gets beaten out by maybe like the Terminator. No, that's a wrong example. What would be like a good example of that? God, I can't like think of anything. I can't think of like a good like analogy. Damn. Holy shit. But anyway, like yeah, like it's just these uppity yuckity like Marvel fans that like don't know anything other than like the ones they were like known on like social media and like all that shit. They have like no information on like other TV shows or like gaming out like other TV shows / movies or gaming outside of like the ones that they see on like, you know, social media or TikTok or like whatever, and they just like they can't comprehend that. You know, like once again, I'll bring this up. Spider-Man 2 is a good solid video game, but there's a reason it lost to Larian Studios' Baldur's Gate 3 for Game of the Year. And I'm not going to go into like any of it. You could like go check out like my Spider-Man 2 video, for crying out loud. Not to be like, you know, mean, but like I said all of this shit like before. But yeah, like X-Men 97 definitely deserves like a 9 out of 10. We're in like in the year of X-Men and mutants. Marvel has been steeping like closer like into mutants, and we're gonna get like the live action version of mutants, and that will be in Deadpool and Wolverine.